I cannot hear the snoring.
I'll give it till exactly 1:30. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cheryl Durst, the Executive Vice President and CEO of IIDA. Welcome to each of you joining us. Welcome to episode 6 in our series of collective design webinars. This series is generously supported by Interface, and today we welcome 4 extraordinary practitioners who will share with us insight on what's next for workplace and for culture and for workplace culture, preparedness, how we gather, how we convene, and so much more. A little bit of housekeeping before I introduce our panelists. Today's program is CEU accredited by IDCEC for 1 CEU. To receive credit, you must attend the entire webinar. If you don't, we know who you are and how to find you. Your credit will be reported within 7 business days if you registered with an IIDA member number. If you didn't register with an IIDA member number, please reach out to us. Contact us at ceu@iida.org with your IIDA or your IDCEC number. All right, let's get started. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. Melissa Hanley, the principal and founder of Studio Blitz in San Francisco. Todd Heiser, managing director and principal, Gensler, Chicago. Angie Lee, partner and design director of interiors with FXCollaborative in New York. Angie is also a VP on our international board of directors and will be our president-elect. And Lauren Rote, president and founding principal of Rote Studios. Welcome to each of you, and thank you for allowing us into your homes for this discussion, this important discussion. Let me just start and ask, how are you all doing? How's life? How's work? Angie, can you kick us off?
Sure. I am doing well as can be. I am healthy. My family's healthy. We are managing, but I think, you know, it's been a while. The sort of wear and tear on our culture and process is showing a little bit. You know, this is a very real thing for us as it is for many people, but there is kind of I've heard this described as kind of like a collective mourning for the way things used to be. So we're kind of feeling that, and then we're trying to leverage that into something that we can use to propel a different way of thinking about design. Yeah. But I think, you know, we're sort of looking for different ways to connect beyond the Zoom, beyond the happy hour, and really doing a lot of research and things that we didn't have time to do before.
Right, right. Melissa, how's life in San Francisco for you and for your team?
Yeah, it's, well, we were already a distributed team, so connecting digitally has been kind of usual, you know, business as normal for us, but it's been certainly been tough as a small business. We've had a couple projects go on hold. We're a little bit smaller than we were when all of this started. Had to lose some really incredible people, which is just absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And, you know, for those of you that don't know, my business partner is also my husband. So we're working in our house, which is under construction. So it's absolute mayhem. This behind me is a complete lie. The rest of it is complete chaos. So it's, you know, personally, it's been a little bit crazy, but, you know, we're making our way through. And the neat thing that's come out of it, though, is that the team is really forming a bond, I think, through it all. Like we're all going through something completely bizarre together and figuring it out together. And that actually is pretty cool.
I love that you outed yourself in saying that your background is a complete lie. I think there are many of us who are on Zoom calls who can, we feel you on that one. Lauren Rote, how's life? How are you doing?
Hi, Cheryl. Well, you know what? I'm fine. We're happy to be in Houston, where things are relatively calm. We got onto the remote working fine. I been remote working for many years with the different offices in LA and Houston and New York. So for me, it was kind of business as usual. Has been interesting to see others who really enjoy the physical and, rely on attaching or putting up drawings and things like that, to see them try to change and morph with it. But all in all, we're good. We've had a couple of projects go on hold as well. But, strangely, Cheryl, we have new projects that we have interviewed for live with Zoom meetings that we've been awarded during this. So it's a seesaw. One day up, one day down, one morning up, one afternoon down. But we're good. We're good. Thank you.
Good. Good. Glad to hear that. And Todd, last but not least, how are you doing?
I think we're doing well. I think I echo a lot of the things I just heard. I think we're entering into a place that I like to call business as unusual, right? And I think that we every day we get out of our beds and we experience kind of the ups and downs that Lauren kind of described. I really feel like we're fortunate. I work at a firm that is truly global, and frankly, I'm really thankful for what I'll call our pioneers in our Asia offices that have taught us, what this is going to look like. And I feel really fortunate to be a part of a global design community that represents an entire world. Some of my friends and certainly my colleagues at Gensler and even at other firms have been really incredibly helpful at showing us that there is hope, that we are going to move through this. We're certainly going to lose some things, we're going to gain some others. And so I think all things considered, we're doing well.
Yeah, good. So here we all are at April 30th, the absolute last day of the month, and about a third of the country is contemplating a phased reopening. A third of us in the US will be headed back to some semblance of activity and engagement. And so top of mind for so many people as we kind of tentatively and deliberately move toward a return to the workplace, what are some critical items that we need to consider as we think about returning to the places where work happens? I'd love to start with you, Melissa, on that.
Yeah, the biggest thing that we're solving for with our clients right now is just that sense of anxiety and sort of unknown and uncertainty that our clients are experiencing and that their teams are experiencing. So much of what can be solved for is cleaning protocols and separation and social distancing and all of the things that we've heard about. But what we can't control for, or I should say, is less easy to control for, is going to be that sense of anxiety. So really trying to make things very visible, very diligent. The cleaning crews wearing neon shirts, going around very actively during the day. A lot of great icons around the office, and we've actually put up a hacker's guide to post-COVID workplace on our website, because we think that there needs to be like a very DIY, get her done solutions right now. What's going to happen for the next 8 weeks? It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be hacked, but it's going to get us back to work. Yeah. And it is those kind of like day one solutions while we figure it out.
I love that. Todd, what's top of mind for you that you're talking about with the Gensler office here in Chicago and with clients about returning to work?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, I think it's the notion of safe, healthy, and valued. And I think it's that we're never going to get anyone back to an urban space into our office buildings unless they feel safe. And I think, we did a survey and 75% of employees across the globe would feel positively if their company actually employed social distancing, if they kept us at home a little bit longer until we were really assured that we are safe. I think we want to make sure that actually as, certainly our employees to return to our offices, our clients deal with this, that people are healthy, that they're coming to work when they feel good about it, when they're actually truly healthy in a COVID-19 sense, but healthy in a mental state of mind, right? That they're actually truly present and ready. And I think one thing that is important to me before we kind of consider any of the logistical parts of coming back to work is that we assure kind of our entire community that our restaurant workers, our retail workers, our first responders are valued and our communities are valued. Because I think when we build the sense of community, I like to say, Cheryl, you said it, people first. When I think about that, that's actually going to be the right environment to actually enter work. And I think if we do that, if we actually kind of keep people safe, healthy, and valued, all of the other protocols, I love what Melissa said about hackability, those are all going to fall in line. We're going to be able to figure out the rest.
Yeah. Angie and Lauren, thank you for that, Todd. Angie and Lauren, in this notion of people first, what does safety look like? What does clean look like? I know we know the physical attributes. How do we communicate safety, hygiene, cleanliness? How do we communicate empathy and that we are putting people first?
Yeah, Cheryl, I think that's a really good question. And I was raised a doctor's daughter who was incredibly germ conscious. So I grew up washing my hands 1,000 times a day. And as soon as the antibacterial soaps and things came out, we had all of those. So, but I think that it's very difficult in a non-hospital environment to do really clean, but there are some practical things that people can do. There's one thing that needs to be done long-term that I might address in a little bit here, but there's some things, and those will be harder to do, but there's some things you can do kind of like a decompression chamber in and a different decompression chamber out. In other words, when we do open back up, and we'll be a little bit slow to do it, I must confess, because we're doing fine virtually. So I'm in no hurry to get everyone back in there and, sure someone gets something. So, but anyway, you come in, you take off your gloves or whatever you've been wearing, you dump them right in this trash, you don't new it, and a mask maybe, you come in, so you're clean when you come in. And then as you leave for lunch or as you leave for the day, you go out a different door and you dump them in the dirty chamber so that there's sort of a clean, dirty kind of in and out. And, certainly there's, in the hotel world, they sanitize the rooms with certain things. I don't know how effective these UV wands are. Everyone's really been trying to understand that. I think there's going to be some pretty heavy research on those UV wands to see how good they are, because that's a relatively easy way to sterilize. It's sort of hard to dump your whole desk with alcohol.
Right.
But these little UV wands are pretty good. There's also some sprays that are relatively effective that each person can have, and we'll give each person one, and you spray it says it's good for 6 to 8 hours, who knows. So I think there will be some things, and I think you're right, amnesia is going to eventually kick in. But there's one thing, we haven't been through one of these, like the polio or the smallpox. We were all too young, so but now we have. And so I don't think our parents ever forgot polio and smallpox and those things. So I don't think we're ever going to truly forget this, and I hope it does systematize us a little bit more, because who knows what could be next if we don't learn a little bit of a lesson.
Yeah. Angie, around standards and protocol and codes, but again, going back to this, how do we communicate in a really seamless, non-obtrusive way? How do we communicate this to employees, to clients, to people who are re-entering the workplace?
Well, we are spending a lot of time kind of sorting through fact and fiction and looking at our partners in the consulting world, in the engineering world, in the scientific world. Lauren, I'm also a daughter of a doctor and another very germophobic Korean woman who actually had TB when she was in high school. And I don't know if it's all Koreans or just my mom, but it was always germs all the time. And, Asian culture already has this kind of threshold ritual at the front door. You take your shoes off, you wash your hands. Now, that only gets you so far. And we've all been learning how to adapt to this kind of new behavior. But it's all the stuff that's invisible that we need to talk about to let people feel more comfortable. We know that, like the sort of vapor, it's so gross. Those vapor visualizations where you see, you can put yourself in a bubble and you can raise a cubicle wall, but it doesn't really protect you 100%. It'll give you better odds. But, looking at the UV fact and fiction dilemma here, we're talking to manufacturers, lighting manufacturers, who are talking about incorporating it into an LED fixture so you switch it on at night. Is it really effective? Probably not. We're talking to our MEP engineers to talk about how air purification and filtration can happen for new builds, and how do you retrofit it. There's been talk about, like, in the old days for the sanatoriums, you put like this big UV box at the top of the room to sanitize all the air at the top. So when it falls, it's clean. So there's some old school methodologies, and we talk about going into this deeper level of research that we don't typically like to do because it's not as fun as beautiful finishes and furniture. So we're not going to solve it with, I mean, honestly, for the next year, we're going to do the old-fashioned mask, wash your hands, gloves, you know, the one-way circuit maybe, and see how long that lasts. But like I was saying in our pre-meeting, there's this funny like resilience, maybe it's a New York thing, especially in Brooklyn, there's this weird amnesia where people are just craving human contact.
Yeah.
And we're really, you're right, like we're overproductive right now. We're looking at our productivity rates and it's through the roof. And it's because people are not taking PTO, and it's taking a little longer to do a little less, but everybody is, I think we're sort of opening up the possibility of people who need to come back to work, like you said, Todd, for mental health almost, that need for connectivity. We are really hardwired to be social creatures. So some people just need to come back and they're willing to mitigate that risk.
And they're willing to be among that first phase, that first group of people. Now, when we were putting this panel together, I think it's coincidental. I know Todd's partner is a physician. Both of you mentioned parents. My mom was a medical researcher. She was a microbiologist whose specialty was infectious diseases. So I never had dirty hands, had lots of dry skin from washing my hands a lot. And our house always smelled like Lysol. But this notion, and Angie, you touched on it, thinking of the team or the design team and being larger and including healthcare and medical experts within that larger team as we're evaluating not just the functionality of spaces, but their efficacy as environments for us to thrive in. And thrive will no longer just mean productive and satisfied, but thrive will also mean being emotionally healthy and physically healthy. Have your firms expanded to include healthcare consultants, medical experts? I'll open that up to the group.
Yeah, we're actually lucky enough to have.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Todd. We're actually lucky enough to
Melissa.
have.
Go ahead.
Certified healthcare planners on staff, oddly enough. And their expertise has been really incredible in terms of material science and kind of best practices, and bringing that in. It's kind of like the last frontier in workplace design. You know, we've talked about like resi-mercial, which is like just the worst phrase ever, and hospitality coming. Yeah, we'll just like that'll be the last time anyone says it. Yeah. And bringing in hospitality design into the workplace, and I think that healthcare design is perhaps the last frontier coming into workplace. So we've been doing a lot of research over the last couple of weeks into that kind of material science into the workplace. And Lauren, you sort of mentioned this earlier about those really, really antimicrobial surfaces are not super appropriate for a workplace. Like that's really in healthcare environments. Like if you've got MRSA in your workplace, like you've got real problems. Like that's not what we need to be worried about. But it has been fascinating to open up the world of cleanability and like, what does it mean to be bleach cleanable? Does it mean that we're leaving bleach on a surface for 24 hours and then like wiping it away? Like what does it actually mean to have these designations? So that has really helped to open up our firm's understanding of at least the product manufacturers that are out there and what these materials are available to us. And just thinking, felt was a big kick a couple of years ago, like probably not doing much of that anymore. Just being a little bit more aware of the surfaces that we're creating and the spaces that we're creating, and taking some cues.
Mm-hmm. Todd? You were going to jump in?
I think that, it's important that, as Melissa said, I mean, really, we're using everything that we know in our healthcare practice to apply that to workplace. And one thing that I think, we've heard so much about social distancing, and I think, we're relying on healthcare experts to really commit to us that the data that we're getting is real. And I think, several weeks ago, no one was wearing masks. Now everyone is wearing masks. I think we started actually saying 6 feet. Do we know what 6 feet? We talked to Angie, I think, talked about the droplets. We think that, maybe could be 10 feet. I think healthcare and our healthcare experts will really lead us through this. And I think that so much about what we do in healthcare is really applicable in workplace. And Cheryl, I'm reminded of a lot of the good things IIDA brings us from, some of the sustainability components, fit well, kind of all of those certifications. And I think what will happen is actually, our healthcare designers are really teaching us what great HVAC looks like, what it means to actually have, better kind of control over materials, cleanability, and safeguarding. And I think from those experts, we're going to see some real innovation around our spaces, starting with air quality and really understanding in our workplace environments, what does that air quality really need to be? And how can we learn from, hospitals and healthcare spaces?
Yeah, I think that was the one I was going to touch on that's not so easy to retrofit day one is the HVAC systems, and certainly LEED has started to help on that, and well buildings has started to help on that. But the percent of fresh air intake and where it goes and the recirculation of it, et cetera. So I do think that is something that people are going to have to figure out, okay, definitely in new buildings, and then what is the retrofit? Because obviously that is really the key to spreading these. Talking about surfaces, it's been interesting, to learn that stainless holds this germ, longer than, or virus longer than other materials. Who would have thought, right? So I think that in looking at the materials, we are going to have to really analyze that in a different way and then figure out how they're cleaned. Hotels are, we're talking more office, but hotels are interesting because, just the faucets alone are that, a lot of them are nickel silver. Well, you can't really put chemicals on nickel silver. Okay, well, what are you going to do? Yeah, it's going to be an interesting exploration. And then for acoustics, what are we going to do about acoustics if we can't have felt and we can't have a bunch of curtains and we can't? It's going to be a very loud world.
Right.
I would actually posit that there's a little work that the healthcare industry is also surely doing because, my sister's in the medical field also. She's an anesthesiologist. These hospital environments are not yet where they can be. I think there's a lot of innovation that needs to happen. And also, they're not the safest spaces to be right now either. So yes, we are looking to the healthcare industry to help us understand sort of leading edge methodologies. But I think going further than that is something that we're all trying to figure out how to do. And it's sort of like an exercise in imagining big enough beyond what we think we know. And I think this is like the big lesson for me is we really don't know what we don't know.
Right.
So with healthcare, yes, absolutely. UV light destroys not just skin and eyeballs, but it really takes a beating on materials. And the air filtration systems, it's very expensive. It's very energy consumptive. So we're trying to figure out what is that thread that ties us into this kind of scientific design thinking. And if you look at this kind of symbolic level, something that, I'm more fluent in talking about with this kind of clinical language that's already happening in beauty and fashion. We already have a lot of beauty and skincare products that look like they're vials and from a lab, and there's a level of trust and a desire to reach out to something that's very, kind of rigorously tested and researched. And I do feel like there's going to be a level of heightened focus on material science, like you mentioned, Melissa, but really deep into kind of like how people are sprinkling zinc into plastics so that it prevents adhesion from bacteria and viruses. And so instead of researching color forecasts lately, I've been like geeking out on like material connection and all these other things that I don't normally focus so much attention on.
Yeah. Angie, I liked your phrase scientific design thinking. There will be, it's already been talked about, not just predicted, this yearning toward facts and data to support, everything. And, evidence-based really had its genesis within healthcare. And I think more and more people are becoming more and more concerned and asking the right questions about their environment. We had an IIDA conversation with a group of HR professionals. And one of the things that we talked about are simply the questions that employees are asking their employers that had never really been asked before. And so questions around air handling and HVAC, and even something as simple as who's our cleaning service for this space? Because again, when you're returning back to the workplace, people are asking these very, very viable questions. Let me just ask around within the structure of work, right? Within the last few years, we've talked about the rise of amenities areas and cafes. There will probably be some necessary changes to how we convene in the workplace. Todd, I know you've done a number of lobby repositionings, amenities are a large part of the portfolio at IIDA headquarters. Can you talk a little bit about how there might be clients rethinking those areas and protocols around those?
Yeah.
And this might be temporary as well. I want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Cheryl, I think you're right. I mean, so many of these amenity spaces are really going to shift. And I think what's going to be great is that the amenity spaces are probably going to scale down a little bit. We're going to look at how collaboration happens. And instead of kind of like we thought about even about our own personal gatherings, I think there are going to be a lot when we return of one-on-one collaboration or one-on-one collaboration with a virtual component. And so I think these collaboration areas kind of that make up so much of our office are going to have to be a blend of physical and virtual. They're going to have to absorb kind of this both and kind of environment that I think we're all going to experience in our world. I think we're going to see them actually expand into a lot of spaces in our office buildings. And I think where we've had these kind of tenant lounges, I think maybe much like our workplaces, we're going to see maybe more discrete collaboration areas that are separated by some space. Probably not that different than I think the social distancing that we're going to see at restaurants or food halls. I think we're going to see some protocols in those spaces that are going to dramatically change how we use those spaces. I think we'll probably see less food in those spaces. We always attach amenities with food in that coffee bar. In the immediate future, I think actually there's probably going to be less self-service. I think we're going to be working with someone like we do a barista, right, to hand us our coffee with our cream in it and ask us, do we want, you know, sweet and low or sugar, as opposed to us going to a bar to get that for ourselves. Same with water. And I think kind of finally in these areas, I love actually what you just said about cleaning. You know, we always, I think, we always want to know a space is clean, but we don't want to see any of the people cleaning the space. And that is actually a paradigm shift that I think is going to really change. If you can see it, you feel it. And so I think kind of hygiene and cleaning protocols are going to be more in our face. I think we're going to see kind of, you know, our partners actually and the people who maintain these spaces be very present. And actually giving kind of, I keep saying, actions speak louder than words, right? If we see it, you know, if we feel like the airplane seat, and you'll love this, the airplane seat that we're sitting in is clean, we'll be more confident to jump on that plane. Same, I think, in office buildings.
Right. Amongst building owners, there's already a conversation that, you know, we would all go to work and we, you know, leave in the evening and magically the next morning your trash would be emptied, dusting will have happened. Right now, there's an emphasis on cleaning happening in the afternoon so that employees are actually seeing the space being clean, because it just reinforces that the space is safe for us to be in. Melissa, I want to tag back on something that you brought up. We were talking about urban areas and density, and distance is now becoming analogous to safety. And thinking about that in terms of with social distancing, but in terms of your clients there in San Francisco and in other cities, what's the change on urban planning and on urban areas that we're going to start to see?
Yeah, actually, this is a question we've been talking a lot about in the firm. Are we going to see urban flight? Are we going to see people leaving urban areas? If for no other reason than working from home in a studio apartment with 2 roommates is really hard to do, especially when it costs $4,000 a month to do that. So I question, you know, what does home look like in the future? I don't think now this great experiment has happened that we have proven work from home can work in many, many industries where perhaps we thought it couldn't before. before. I don't think we're going backwards, and I think many firms will start to use this as part of their portfolio planning in the future. Certainly our clients are looking at this, ones who had been really reluctant to embrace work from home. Even big technology companies are actually using this as part of their real estate strategy moving forward, saying we're just going to plan for utilization of 30%, and we'll plan for 20% to be work from home and the rest to be mobile. So that is going to change, which means the emphasis is going to on home is going to have to change. And I think that might mean moving out of high density cities. And Angie was discussing, the sense of safety in cities like Manhattan. And I can't really speak to that. I think San Francisco certainly doesn't have the same sort of sense of density, and certainly the same, I don't know, I'll probably get shot for saying this, but I don't think San Franciscans feel the same way about San Francisco the way New Yorkers feel about New York, but.
Yeah, I know there is this sort of, there's a diehard New York attitude here that I never appreciated until now. And I've been through both, almost hurricanes, 9/11, and a big blackout, even a tornado. And this is different, obviously. But I think people will either double down and really invest in the city, because density really, there is so much to be said for density. And when we talk about all this, and sometimes we often lose sight of, the sustainability crisis that still awaits us. We need to negotiate how to keep our heads on without sort of panicking and fleeing the city. We don't want urban sprawl. We also, I guess Rahm Emanuel said this, right? Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah.
So maybe out of this, what we can do is start to look at expanding the formula that we typically apply to residential units. My firm at FXCollaborative does a lot of multifamily residential, and there's a lot of work from home that we're already factoring into amenities. So in addition to those being highly serviced models, where already what you call the hygiene theater is happening, Cheryl, I think that will apply to workplace, and the co-working giants have been talking about that as well. But this idea of ingenuity, I'm going to share a story from one of my designers, Frank, who lives in a studio apartment with his girlfriend. And to keep their minds off things, they have a giant Star Wars jigsaw puzzle. And they couldn't put it on the coffee table because that's also their desk. So they put it on the floor, they cleared off the rug. They're doing it on the floor. When they want to do yoga, they put the carpet on it and do yoga. When they want to do work, they put the table and the carpet on the puzzle and they work. So there's some of that I love about New Yorkers. And I think they're very proud of having this kind of creativity and efficiency. But having said that, like how much longer can he exist like that? I don't know if it can happen forever. So I do want to see this expand the consciousness of our approach to humanity, really kind of exercising our empathy muscles and, really focus on the issues instead of averting our gaze and going to the easier, more beautiful stuff.
Thank you for that, Angie. That sounded like an urban version of your friends doing like a home urban version of rock, paper, scissors, except it's table, jigsaw puzzle, something else. Lauren, let me ask you, as we're talking about, initially this is a workplace conversation, but also with hospitality and with residential, knowing that for so many people, home feels safe right now. Home is where we're working. Home is where kids are learning. Home is where many people are healing. Home has been flexed and stretched to mean so much. From a hospitality standpoint, knowing that for so long in hospitality, there was that sense of, I want to feel like a guest, but I want to feel like a guest in a beautiful home. What do you think the effects around hospitality will be? And also knowing that so many employees in hospitality will be on the front lines of folks coming back to work as well.
Yeah, I mean, all of those are good questions. I think in general, and we were talking about this the other day, when modernism was first coming into play, there had been a good deal of spread of disease. And so we were wondering if, in a sense, modernism came cleanliness back then in the 20s in a very similar way. So contemporary hotels were starting to be the thing. You know, I've been contemporary for many years, but I've done very, in stylistic hotels. But now our operators, for about the past year, have been very interested in contemporary. I do think we'll see a trend towards that. Definitely cleaner, lighter, whiter, brighter, so that when the guest goes into the guest room, they'll understand it looks clean. And you know, there's been this trend for hotels to look like Brooklyn in the late 1800s. Oh, we'll see. You know, I don't think that will continue, because I think people do want to literally be able to see if it looks clean. I think that means a trend toward hard surfaces. I think it definitely a trend towards more visibly cleanable. You know, you can already check in remotely. You don't even need to go to a front desk anymore. So for the most part, you could call ahead, tell them you're coming to the hotel. You know, the only sort of unsafe place might be the elevator, and just wait until someone got off of it, get in your elevator, go to your hotel. And you know, we were laughing because we used to travel to those little motels, and the glasses in the bathroom were wrapped in the paper and it had a stamp on it. I think we'll probably go back to that, right? Because, you know, how clean are those glasses in the vanity of a hotel room? So I think we're going to, and you know, there's been this big struggle in the hotel world about single-use plastics versus the bottle of water. And I think that's that's definitely a struggle, because, you know, if it's come out of a wrapper and it's disposable, theoretically it's clean. If it's a bottle of water that they put in your room, is it clean? So, you know, we were just starting to get over that. So now we're going to have to, you know, people are starting to accept the bottle of water. So now we're going to have to rethink all of that. But hotels will come back. People love to travel. And the HVAC issue is one that I've told my hotel clients that if you're doing a new build, let's think about it now. And some of my clients have said, okay, well, let's look at these sanitize. I think Samsung has a new sanitize the closet machine out. So you build it into the closet and it sanitizes the clothes. It's meant to take the moisture out and the smells out and things. So putting those in hotel rooms. So there's a lot, I think, that can be done. But the main thing, to your point, making people feel safe. I'm going to have to shut my door because there's some noise going on.
That's okay. That's all right. Hashtag real life. Knowing that this moment that we're dealing with now for the next 12 to 18 months is pre-vaccine. So a lot of these measures are reactionary measures to what we're living through. You know, we move from reactionary to resiliency, but we have that moment of reset where there will be this moving forward. So I want to balance those temporary measures. What are the things, the practices, the protocols, what you as designers will do that will endure, that we will just continue to do kind of this in the post-vaccine moment? And again, in tandem with that question, I'm asking like 6 questions at one time. Tandem with that question, what are you going to be talking to your clients about in a post-vaccine environment? Melissa?
I mean, I think the indoor air quality conversation is something that is long overdue, and something that certainly evidence-based design in the healthcare world has proven is so effective. And certainly, I think we need to be talking about systems more in workplace. So, I mean, it's such an unsexy thing and such an expensive thing already. I mean, we're spending just an ungodly amount in HVAC systems already and the projects that we're building, but it's so critically important to the well-being of a person that I think we need to be prioritizing that conversation as part of our design conversation, our storytelling with our clients earlier on, and making that really clear. So we're really focusing on that education piece in our company.
Good. And you know, two of you have said this. There are aspects of design that are sexy and that you love, and you love to talk to clients about. Hygiene and cleanliness isn't, you know, that might be the new sexy though. And continuing to have those conversations with clients will be so critical. Angie, what will be the most logical conversation that you're having with a client in a post-COVID vaccine world?
Well, I think we're going to be taking stories that we've already started before all of this happened. So let's go back to the hotels for a second. I have people who work in fashion who would travel, I don't know, 6 months out of the year, kind of like you, Cheryl, And they were already completely leery of bed scarves, fluffy bolster pillows that never got washed. And, you know, already closets were starting to become turned inside out. So it was like completely decanted. There's no doors. You just see the hang bar. And having this kind of transparency and the space kind of teaching you, telling you how you're supposed to use it was already happening. So to be able to walk into a space and trust with your own eyes that, yes, you can get a vacuum cleaner between the bed and the wall. And I know that it's actually a cleanable space. That's one, but there's this kind of emotional, experiential narrative that will come into play that, again, will sort of look into a deeper level of empathy. So when we talk about the stories with our clients now, it's going to be much more about the supply chain. It's about this kind of circular process. We're talking about that a lot. And I think it's going to become imperative and mandatory to put sustainability at the front. So it's not just about the earth, it's about how, you know, it's healthy planet, healthy people, healthy biodiversity, and even healthy microbiome. So I think, you know, Lauren may have touched on the antimicrobials in a different talk, but you kill all those germs, you're going to kill the good ones too. So there is something like, you know, I have personal experience with my son being over antibiotic. That's not a word, but when he was a kid, he you know, he had a severe reaction to too many of those kind of drugs that are stripping away all of the good stuff in his gut. So there's, again, I think we're really craving, like you said, some real information. You know, I think Todd mentioned this before we're like, okay, the WHO was saying you don't have to wear a mask, and now we're saying you have to wear a mask. We kind of knew that you were supposed to all along, but you know what you know. I think the facts have to line up with sort of like personal experience as well. So we as designers, I think, have a great opportunity to align these things and start thinking beyond the normal realms of design research.
Yeah. You know, Todd, designers can craft and create healthy environments. We know that.
Of course.
How can we help design behavior of the people who inhabit those environments? So much of this is behavioral. There's a whole piece around personal responsibility. We are all so interconnected. I think that's been one of the lessons learned from this moment about our interconnectedness as human beings. And, you know, my not wearing a mask could affect your health. How can design help support the behavioral piece of this?
I love this question. And when Angie was thinking, you know, when Angie was just talking, I was thinking, you know, if we think about the behavior first and the strategy behind why we design better. And I think actually, let's actually even take away the notion of this pandemic that's happening around us. I've been talking a lot to my clients about our behaviors, how our behaviors have shifted. So because we're virtual, you know, there's a whole series of paradigms that I think have occurred. We actually have stopped, you know, traveling long distances to meet people face to face because a phone call now suffices. We've actually, instead of taking our days in hour-long blocks and hour-long meetings by default, we actually are adjusting our time to actually kind of curate a time based on the conversation. And so I think that actually all of, you know, our behaviors are shifting because we're working virtually. And I think, you know, so often in design with our clients, we're actually looking for consensus on pretty reversible, non-consequential decisions. We can shift, right? Like we can have choice. And what I think is amazing about this moment is that it is going to allow us to actually look to our clients, look to our cities, look to our environment, and actually look at the behaviors and design new environments to respond to the behaviors. Because for so long, I think we created design and then we expected those designs to shift behavior. And I'd love for this moment, this seismic moment really, a moment that none of us have really ever experienced before, I'd love for it to actually, you know, allow us to step back and really reflect on what's happened over the past few months and truly step into our role as designers and look at kind of what's happened and look at how people are kind of acting and create something new and really exciting because of that.
Yeah, Perfect. How can product manufacturers help support in this, kind of in this pandemic and post-pandemic period? What do you want to see coming from product manufacturers? Can I start with you, Lauren, on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was talking with Hayworth about it the other day, and we were sort of laughing. My new sofa has a arm that opens up, and it's a drawer with power in it. And I thought about it as having your laptop and other things like that in it. But now I'm thinking, well, that's where all the antibacterial stuff will live, right in the drawer of the sofa. So when you sit down, you wand your sofa. Before you sit down, you wand your sofa, and then you access the antibacterial hand soap. But I think they are all looking at it immediately, and this whole idea of social spaces, because we're all of us on this call know that everyone was gearing up for social spaces, and I think we wanted social spaces so bad because we're tired of just our laptops and not having the interaction. So offices have been creating these, and now now what do? We're not going to have them. We will have them. But I think Todd is right. They'll need to be a little bit more distant, a little bit less face to face, but people will still want to use them, and we'll still have them. And I think they're looking at materials, they're looking at more cleanability. They're really, really all trying to figure it out, obviously, just like we are.
Yeah.
And I think that really the way I've been thinking about it, I think that if you think about what a hospital does well, it is these systems. They're not, their air conditioning systems are better than ours are, but other than that, how different is it? It's really about the system that a doctor's behavior is taught about, how to put the clothes on, how to take them off, when to wash your hair, that nothing ever touches, nothing ever contaminates. So I think that, the design itself will change a little bit, but then I just think that we're going to have to implement amazing systems. And I do think we're going to have to implement some sort of front door, outdoor checkpoint thing. The construction sites have remained open in Houston, less dense worker, slower time, and we are not invited and don't go until after all the workers have gone. However, even when we go, they check our temperature from a distance. They make sure we have our mask on and have our gloves on. And so, I think that there's, temperature readings that can be done without someone holding that little thing at your forehead. And who knows what people will invent. We're very adaptable. People are smart. There's lots of technology. So I think some sort of a, again, decompression chamber, 100% effective. But I'm hoping that, because gosh, what happened? Bars can't go away, right? What are we going to do? We can't sit 8 feet away, from the next person next to us. We'll never have any grandchildren or anyone getting married if it's really the case.
I love that. The best prediction out of this is we might never have grandchildren if we don't pay attention to space. Melissa, let me ask you about support from product manufacturers. Where can you see they can step in and help support efforts?
Yeah, well, so far, I just want to give a major shout out to our current manufacturer reps, that you all have been amazing in sending materials to our homes, and several of them are sending duplicate samples to our clients' homes and to us, so that time is not lost with shipping, because figuring out shipping and post office runs and things have been a little bit chaotic. So right now, it's just everyone's raising the game, which is just so thank you very much. I think everyone's having that experience. What I'm finding really, really valuable are reps that are able to kind of be cross-functional within their own product lines and say, like, this thing that I've been representing right now, I can actually grab from this other part of our catalog and consider an alternate application. How can we create a mismatch or a mashup of product that's already in manufacture for a different use? And I'm thinking specifically, like within the furniture world, maybe there's like a panel or system or material or something that can be applied to a new product in a new way. Because if we're waiting for the manufacturing of something to come on the market, it's going to be 4 years. So we don't have time. Like, we need something now that's going to be a unique solution to a problem we're having now. So what I'm really loving are the conversations with manufacturers who are like, well, we make this thing over here, and if we just kind of applied it to this thing, that could be really a cool solution. So those out of the box kind of questions and inventions are really exciting and really valuable, and actually pretty cool.
I haven't asked a demographic question, and I want to ask a demographic question. Thinking about your clients, do you think demographics does have an effect on how they're thinking about safety and re-entry to the workplace. Have any of you all talked about that?
Yes, and I think it doesn't make any sense, because you would think like one age group would have different sensibilities than the other,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, I feel like a lot of our more elderly relatives are just out and about, like running around like kids in the candy store. Like, you know, you can't tell them to be safe or, you know, keep safe distances, and they're just going to do their thing no matter what. And then there's a lot of, you know, the younger folks who, again, like when I was that young, I just felt like I was going to live forever too. But it ranges. It's really interesting. I can't put a sort of a general cast on any sort of generational bucket.
Yeah, Todd?
One thing that I think is so amazing about this is I've had a client say to me, "This is the best time ever to go through a pandemic," and you know, she's actually a 67-year-old woman, and what I think is fantastic about it is she taught me. She said, "Listen, we have so much technology at our fingertips. You can sit at home and you can order a dinner. You can actually still get your groceries." She said, "You know, when I've gone through similar things like this in my life, but there were not actually all of the amenities that we have in our world to actually get through this. You know, we didn't have Netflix. We actually had to just watch what came on the TV. We didn't have a world filled with choice." And so one thing that I think is amazing about demographics that I've actually seen right now is that I've seen actually a lot of our kind of young tech savvy employees teach actually maybe our less tech savvy employees how to get in a video conference, how to look great on that video conference, how to actually troubleshoot remotely. And, you know, I think there's this stretch that happens in our world that is bridging demographics that's based around knowledge. It's actually saying doesn't matter, you know, how old you are, where you come from. Right now, people are around to help. And that is, I think, one really great thing about everyone being remote. Everyone needs that person to actually lean in and say, "Hey, this is how you do this." And I love that about our world now. I think it kind of transcends a demographic that anyone can be taught a new skill. And I think, I mean, how many people do you see making bread online right now, right? We all can learn great things, right?
So much bread, so much banana bread out there.
COVID-19 is becoming the COVID-19.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let me just ask a personal question as we're moving into wrap-up mode for each of you, whether it's personally or at work as designers. What are you going to do differently as a result of what you've learned, endured, coming through this? Lauren, let me start with you. What are you going to do differently about work or life or travel or anything as a result of what you've learned coming through this?
Well, it's interesting because I'm over a 3 million mile flyer, approaching a 4 million mile flyer, and I haven't been playing in almost 2 months. I'm kind of enjoying it. I'm not going to lie. I've decided being on the ground is a good place to be. You know, I think several things. I think one of the good things that has come out of this for us is I think it's organized us better. You know, we're design first. And so in my own personal, I'm a very organized person, but anything spontaneous design I do, right? But having to work remotely like this quickly has really helped us organize with our clients and ourselves. And the really good thing about it is it's made New York work with LA work with Houston. It doesn't really matter where you are right now. We always have a little bit of territorialism and a little bit of a hard time sharing people across office, and now they're doing it as if it just doesn't even matter. So that's a beautiful thing. The second thing I'm excited about, and I got this idea talking here, was I think we'll send people back one at a time, and they have to clean their desks till spotlessness.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'll be fantastic. So one at a time, we'll get a clean office, then we'll go back to a clean one.
Perfect. Perfect. Angie, what about you? What are you going to do differently as a result of this?
Well, I think my sense of time and space has changed drastically. And I think and I actually haven't gotten there yet, but the ability to slow down and kind of appreciate the time that I need, which has always been a balancing issue with me. It's something that I really understand. I've always known this, but I really understand the importance of doing that. And also, and I'm taking cues from a lot of my design team, they're already kind of figuring this out more successfully than I am. So they're taking advantage of the 30 minutes that they have between meetings to do yoga or meditate or listen to music or take care of themselves. And that is a gift. I mean, I feel like, you know, I was raised in a different time, and I think just this kind of go, go, go mentality is very harmful. And that's kind of the society that we live in. And hopefully, you know, I'll be able to sort of manage that better for myself. And then of course, you know, telegraph that to the rest of the office.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that may be the
Self-care
wake-up
matters.
call we all needed, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very, very true.
Yeah.
Melissa, what about you? What's going to change? What will be different for you?
I really have to echo Angie's sort of takeaway from this. I think the last 10 years have just been a million miles an hour, starting the business, growing the business, expanding the business. And this has just been an incredible opportunity. After the first 2 weeks of like sheer panic, sort of started to ease, and I sobered up in many ways. Then I realized that this is an incredible opportunity to sort of reset and take stock of what's going on. And like, okay, here's this incredible global vulnerability that's happening. Everybody's going through the same experience at the same time, and everybody's anxious about it, and we're all freaking out. Like,
Yeah.
this is hopefully never going to happen again, but also, wow, here is an opportunity to grab a hold of this and say, we don't have to be the same. Like, the normal that we had does not have to be the new normal. Like, let's actually not have it be the new normal. Let's do something different with our lives when we come back. Let's
Agreed.
not have that be the same. So I'm really looking forward to coming back with empathy. I think is a great word, and coming back with this people-centered, time, sensitive, and just thinking about that perception of free time and having that be the luxury, like trying to be time affluent is a phrase that I've heard lately.
Love that.
Like, let's try for that. Let's try for time affluence.
Yeah, I love that. Todd, what are you going to do differently? What are you going to think about differently?
Yeah, I'm going to be grateful. We live in a really exceptional time, and I think for me, the past 7 weeks that we've been remote has actually made me realize all of the things that I take for granted. The promise that in the morning I can get up and go to an office and be surrounded by, great, unbelievably talented people, and a community that is incredibly supportive, that is truly changing the world for the better. I really believe that. For a lot of my friends that are likely on this call, for organizations like IIDA that stitch us together globally, and really for the tools, the technology, and the world that we live in that really can be used for incredible good, that can break down lines and cities, that can bring us closer together. And so for me, it's actually one constantly of reminding myself that I am incredibly fortunate to be able to work from home. I'm incredibly fortunate to work for a firm that, allows me that ability. And I think all of us, if we're working and we're actually still getting a paycheck, we have so much to be grateful for. And I promise for the rest of my days that, that's one thing that I'm going to remember. These are all privileges, and they're ones that we should be really thankful for.
Yeah, big amen to that. As an industry, we're very fortunate. Clearly, as an industry, we're at the forefront of talking to clients and organizations and brands about behavior and preparedness. I can think of no better industry to talk about reentry. I think, Angie, just to tag on, we need to be careful at that tipping point between what is safety and hygiene and what is safety and hygiene theater, in creating spaces that are safe and hygienic as opposed to just appear to be, although the perception of safety and hygiene is going to be incredibly important. And Todd, your comment on work-life balance, we've got work-life integration like nobody's business right now. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's balanced, because we're hearing things about Zoom exhaustion, and we're all working more than ever before, where our time is ticking down quickly. And I cannot thank the four of you enough for this phenomenal conversation. We could keep going everything from how to talk to clients about this. We might need a part 2 of this, and then the reality of returning to work. But just to close, I want to thank each of you again so very much. Thank our sponsor Interface for their support, to Team IIDA who is working this behind the scenes, and thank every single one of you who have attended. Thank you for inviting us into your homes, for your support of IIDA. Stay safe, be well, and we all hope to see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you very much. Thanks. That's
Cheryl.
amazing.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Wonderful.
You guys
Bye.
were great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.